Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're really zooming in, taking a focused look at a specific part of a classic text.
That's right. We're working with the Serpent Power by Avalon. But importantly, for this deep dive, we are staying very strictly within pages 49 through 82. Our goal is to unpack embodied consciousness, or Jīvātmā, just as it's presented right there.
So this isn't about the whole book. Think of it more like we're examining a detailed schematic, a specific blueprint offered by this system for understanding individual consciousness, how the transcendent connects to us here and now.
Exactly. These pages really map out the human being, body, mind, spirit from this particular viewpoint. We'll be looking at the different layers or bodies it talks about, the inner workings like mind and intellects.
And how that all connects to our everyday experience, even different states like waking or dreaming.
Right. It's a complex picture of what makes you, the listener, a conscious individual, according to this specific framework. So let's get into this model of embodied consciousness, Jīvātmā, based only on these pages.
Okay, so page 49 kicks things off by defining Jīvātmā. What's the core idea there?
Well, it defines Jīvātmā as consciousness, but specifically consciousness that is embodied. It's tied to mind and matter.
And it immediately draws a contrast, doesn't it?
It does. Right away, it sets it against Paramātmā, the transcendent consciousness, which is described as formless. So Jīvātmā is consciousness with form. Paramātmā is consciousness without form, at least in this initial framing.
Interesting start. How does the text then explain where this Jīvātmā, this individual consciousness, actually comes from?
Pages 49 and then 51 through 54 bring in Purusha and Prakriti Shakti. Purusha is presented as the static consciousness, the witness.
Okay.
And Prakriti Shakti is the dynamic power, the force that actually produces mind and matter. It's called the immediate source.
So Prakriti is essentially the material cause, the substance everything's made of.
That's how it's put, yes, the material cause. And the jiva, the individual sentient being with a body and senses, is the result of this interaction. The text calls it the world organic life, or even the Kshudra Brahmanda.
The individual microcosm, like the whole universe within one person.
Exactly. And this whole unfolding, this manifestation, is driven by the gunas.
Ah, the gunas. Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, pages 52-53, talk about these. How are they described?
They're called the modes or principles of Prakriti. Sattva is about illumination, revealing things. It tends to push against tamas. Rajas is all about activity, motion, the driving force.
And tamas?
Tamas is inertia, suppression, veiling consciousness. The text points out that as you sort of ascend, the sattva guna becomes more dominant. The mix of these three really shapes the individual's experience.
And Prakriti isn't always active like this.
No, pages 53, 54 mention two states. There's a quiescent state, unmanifest, where the gunas are perfectly balanced.
Yeah.
And then the active state, where they stir, that's called spandana, vibration, and produce everything we see, the vikara or vikriti.
Okay, so this Jīvātmā, this embodied consciousness, is described as being enshrined within layers. The text lays out three specific bodies.
Right. Pages 54, 56, and 66 introduce them. The causal body, or karana sharira, the subtle body, sukma sharira, also called linga sharira, and the gross body, stula sharira.
And is there a flow between them, a hierarchy?
Yes, page 56 clarifies that. The subtle body evolves from the causal, and the gross body evolves from the subtle. It's like layers unfolding, from the finest principles to the most concrete form.
And the gross body is our physical body, the one we interact with the world through.
Exactly. Page 56 calls it the body of matter, derived from the senses. And page 66 adds an interesting detail about the name Sharira coming from Shri, meaning decay.
Ah, highlighting its temporary nature, subject to change and dissolution.
Precisely.
Now, the subtle body seems really crucial. Pages 56, 57, and 60, 65 go into quite a bit of detail about its parts and how it works. This feels like the engine room of our inner experience.
It really is central. The text breaks it down into, broadly, three groups. You have the antakarana, the inner instrument, then the 10 senses, the indriyas, and the 5 subtle objects of the senses, the tanmatras. Pages 56 and 65 actually list them out, mentioning 17 elements total: buddhi, ahamkara, manas, the 10 indriyas, and the 5 tanmatras.
17 components, and they all work together to create the jiva's experience.
Yeah, that's the idea. Pages 57 and 60 explain that the jiva doesn't just experience everything all at once. Experience is limited, filtered through interaction with specific sense objects. It's a process of selection using specific senses and these inner faculties.
The senses, the indriyas, are described as instruments.
Yes, instruments of the jiva, used by the subtle body for sensing and acting. And page 61 makes a key point. Manas is needed for them to work. They require that connection to the mind.
All right, let's break down the Antakarana, the inner instrument itself. Manas usually comes up first. What's its role?
Page 61 calls Manas the internal agent. Think of it as the mind that directly interfaces with the senses, receiving sensations. It's also linked to desire and works with the senses for perception and action. Page 64 adds that Manas is where thinking and contemplation happen.
The discursive mind. Then there's Ahamkara, the eye maker. That sounds fundamental.
Oh, it is. Pages 57 and 62 define it as the faculty of self-arrogation. It's the part that says, this experience is mine. It creates the sense of being a particular person, I am so-and-so, having this thought or feeling.
So it takes the incoming data and stamps me on it.
Pretty much. Page 62 says this power of self-arrogation welds the ego to perception. It makes it your perception.
Okay, Manas receives and thinks, Ahamkara personalizes. What about Buddhi?
Buddhi is the intellect. Pages 61 and 63 describe it as the determining faculty. It resolves, it differentiates between things. It's seen as the basis of cognition. If Manas presents options or thoughts, Buddhi decides.
It makes the judgment call.
Exactly. And page 65 adds a crucial function. Buddhi is what finally makes over the processed experience, the object, to Purusha, the consciousness itself, allowing it to be witnessed or known.
And the last one mentioned is Chitta.
Right, Chitta. Page 64 describes it as the mind stuff. It's the faculty of memory, the storehouse where thoughts reside, and where samskaras, those deep-seated impressions from past experiences, are kept. It's involved in recall, bringing things back to mind, and also in fixing attention.
So like a mental database, an attention mechanism.
Kind of, yeah. It's the background substance of the mind, holding past content. So you have Manas receiving thinking, Ahamkara identifying, Buddhi determining, and Chitta storing, recalling.
That's really intricate inner system. So the Antakarana, working with the senses, generates the structured, personal world the jiva experiences.
Yes, pages 61, 63 stress this cooperative process. Manas interacts, Buddhi decides. Ahamkara makes it personal. The combination produces perception and action for the individual experiencer, the jiva, within this framework. It's presented as a collaboration of functions.
Okay, moving outwards again to the physical level. Pages 68, 73 and 77, 78 focus on the gross body's makeup.
Right. The gross body, our tangible form, is said to be made up of the 5 Mahapūtas, the gross elements. Page 69 clarifies these elements actually derive from the tanmotras, those subtle sense potentials we talked about in the subtle body.
So there's a direct link, and the text lists these elements and their qualities.
It does. Pages 69 and 73 give the classic list. Akasha, ether or space associated with sound. Vayu, air or wind with touch. Tejas, fire with color and form. Apas, water with taste. And Prasivi, earth with smell, and also solidity or cohesion.
These are the building blocks of the physical world in this view.
Yes, and specifically of our physical body. The text also mentions, on pages 69 and 72, 73, their connection to the physical body structure and implicitly to the chakras, though that's not the main focus here.
And intimately connected with the gross body is the vital life force, prana.
Exactly. Pages 73 and 77 bring in prana. It's the vital principle that animates the gross body. It's described as the source of all our energy, the very basis of physical life.
And it's not just one thing called prana. There are different types.
Correct. Page 77 details the main varieties, or vayos. There's apana, the downward moving energy linked to excretion. Samana, located in the gut, deals with digestion, assimilation, kindling the inner fire.
Okay.
Vayana is diffused everywhere, involved in circulation and distribution throughout the body. And Udana is the upward moving energy associated with speech and, importantly, leading consciousness out of the body, for instance, at death, or even potentially during sleep.
So different vital currents managing different bodily systems.
That's the picture presented, yes. Different manifestations of the core life energy.
So we've mapped the bodies, the inner faculties. Now, pages 79, 81 bring it all together by describing the different states of consciousness the jiva goes through. This connects directly to our own experience.
Absolutely. This section links the whole structure back to subjective reality. It outlines 4 main states, or avasas.
First up is Jagrat, the waking state.
Right. Page 79 describes Jagrat as the state where the jiva's consciousness is primarily operating through the gross body. The jiva in this state is called Vishva. It's the enjoyer of gross objects to Lobuk. This is our normal awareness of the external world via the senses. Duality is strong here, and the ego, ahamkara, is active in the subtle body.
Then comes Svapna, the dreaming state.
In Svapna, also page 79, the focus shifts. Consciousness is now mainly associated with the subtle body. The jiva here is called Taijasa. It's the enjoyer of subtle objects, pravivik tabuk. These objects are the inner impressions, the samskaras, memories from the waking state replaying or recombining.
So dream objects are internal reality according to this.
Yes, the text emphasizes that. They aren't external things being perceived.
Okay. And then sushupti, dreamless sleep.
Page 81 covers sushupti. Here, consciousness is associated with the causal body, the karana sharira. It's a state of deep rest, often described as undifferentiated awareness. Interestingly, the text mentions that a pure experience called Shuddha-vidya can be accessed here, linking it potentially to states like samadhi. The jiva in this state is called prajna.
And beyond these three, there's turiya.
Kriya, the fourth state. Page 81 presents it as transcending the other three states and their associated bodies. This is where that pure experience, Shuddha-vidya, is said to be fully realized. It's not just another state like the others, but something underlying them, a distinct level of consciousness.
The text even hints at something beyond turiya.
Just briefly, yeah. Page 81 mentions a potential fifth state, beyond the fourth, connected with Ishvara Tattva, leading towards merging with the Supreme Shiva. It suggests a path continuing even beyond turiya within this specific system.
And did these pages touch on individual versus, say, a collective consciousness?
Page 81 does mention the individual jivas corresponding to the states Vishva, Taijasa, Prajna, and it also introduces the idea of a collective or cosmic jiva called Hiranyagarbha. So it hints that this individual structure we've been exploring might exist within a larger universal consciousness that is also, in a sense, embodied.
So that really covers the core ideas from pages 49 to 82 of the Serpent Power on Jīvātmā. It's this remarkably detailed, layered system for understanding the embodied individual.
It really is. It's less abstract philosophy and more like a technical manual, outlining how consciousness manifests through these different bodies, uses specific inner tools, and shifts between distinct states of reality.
For you, listening, encountering a framework like this, what does it spark? This idea of consciousness being enshrined in layers, causal, subtle, gross, or that your own mind functions through these specific components like buddhi, ahamkara, manas.
Yeah, how does this systematic approach land with you? Does this breakdown of consciousness, its parts and its states, resonate with your own feeling of moving between waking life, dreaming, and deep sleep? Does it offer a different lens on your own inner world?
All right, let's just quickly recap the main points from these specific pages. We started with Jīvātmā, embodied consciousness, defined in contrast to the formless Paramātmā, emerging from Prakriti via the gunas.
Then we looked at the three-body structure, causal, subtle, and gross, seeing how they unfold from each other.
We spent a good amount of time unpacking the subtle body, particularly the Antakarana manas, buddhi, ahamkara, chitta, and their roles in processing experience, along with the senses and 10 matras.
We then connected that to the gross body, out from the Mahabhutas or elements, and animated by prana, the vital force with its different functions or vayus.
And finally, we tied it all to the states of consciousness, Jagrat, waking, Svapna, dreaming, Sushupti, deep sleep, and the transcendent fourth state, Turiya.
All drawn exclusively from that specific section, pages 49 through 82 of the Serpent Power.
So here's a final thought to leave you with, based purely on this material. If this text is right, and your consciousness is nested in these layers and experiences radically different realities in waking versus dreaming because it's interfacing with different structures.
What does that imply about the fundamental nature of your own awareness and its actual relationship to what you perceive as solid external reality?
Something to ponder. Thanks for joining us for this focused deep dive.